The Big Light presents
Then it's the guilt, isn't it? You just completely beat yourself up because you think, I should be able to wash my face today. I should be able to go for a shower. I should be able to brush my teeth.
My name is Halina Rafai, and this is the A Sonic Hug podcast. Over the coming episodes, you're going to hear the voices of people from different walks of life who deal, experience and battle mental health issues. In this episode, I speak to Emma Furniss, a health visitor working for the NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde. Emma and I have known each other for around 16 years. We met through music and built a friendship. Admittedly, we had lost touch, but we're in each other's social media sphere, so it came as a shock when I spoke to her for this episode. You're going to hear about Emma's struggle with depression, aspects of grief that affected her life, and where her journey is taking her. There is discussion around depression and suicide that some people may find difficult listening. This is Emma's story.
So my experience with mental health, to be honest, from a child growing up, I wouldn't have said that I had any issues. I would have described myself as really happy-go-lucky and not having any problems or any troubles. And the first time that I thought I was starting to struggle was in 2010 when my gran died, and I would have said grief was a trigger then for a definite dip or a change in mental health and a change in my personality where my mood was low. I just felt I was only able to get to work and back home and just felt generally quite low. So I expected that to last for a short period of time, just until I navigated through losing her. But unfortunately, that lasted. Up until now, 12 years on, and it's only through working through that and realising that the grief losing her was a trigger, but probably that depression and struggling with mood has been there for quite a long time, through a bit of childhood stuff and adversity then. But if you'd asked me when I noticed a real change, it would have been in 2010 when I felt then it was triggered by grief. But it's only now, reflecting and doing a bit of work on myself and some talking therapies, that I realised that difficulties with mood has been there, historically for a really long time. In December 2010, my gran died, and I have a very small and close family, and she was very much part of that unit. She was part of my little safety bubble from a young age. Just, I stayed with her every Saturday night, and she was just my heart and soul, my best friend. And even though she was old and we were expecting it, it was just an absolute trauma, and I couldn't navigate life without her. And then it just felt that things were just so tough, so despite me managing to do some day-to-day activities, she was always at the back of my mind, and that pain and that ache was just so strong. And just the darkness of not being able to see her or talk to her was consuming, just all consuming every day. And that definitely just led to a time of staying in my bed for long periods, not really wanting to speak to anybody, not wanting to do much. And the times where I had to show up was definitely when the mask would go on and I would appear to be okay, but certainly behind closed doors in the safety of my home, it was a really dark time where it was just complete nothingness. I managed to go to work because I had bills to pay, and I was renting with my now husband, so I was quite focused on making sure that we could pay our rent. But that was it really. I was able to go and do my shift for work and come home, and then I guess my comfort was just being alone and being under the duvet. It was just painful, and I absolutely thought at that time it was just solely related to her not being here anymore. I certainly would speak to my husband when I could feel comfortable in doing so, and that was always a complete breakdown. So he was just fantastic in just being that shoulder to cry on every single time, that kind of crying where you can't speak, and my days off when I wasn't working, he would come in from work, and if I was still in my bed, like, he wouldn't make any comments about that, or, what are you doing, why are you still in bed? He was just the number one support, and still is to this day. I felt I could talk to my close friends about losing my gran and what that was feeling like, and the upset related to grief. But if I'm really honest, I wasn't saying, I feel depressed. I absolutely did not say that. I didn't, tell them just to the extent of what was going on, and how debilitating things were becoming. But I very much felt that I had to hide what was going on behind closed doors. And I think with my family at that point, it was just very much, I felt maybe talking about her would upset them. And I was in no way ready to say, oh, I'm actually really struggling here. I felt very comfortable about keeping that secret. There has absolutely been what I would describe as waves and dips and things. Like, I genuinely, what I said earlier, I thought that it was just going to be a short-term situation, and it wasn't until that I was just returning to the GP to discuss, that my feelings and how low I was, and I knew I wasn't feeling right within myself. And it wasn't until maybe around the fourth time going to the GP that medication was discussed. And this was probably around, I want to say maybe, not till maybe 2013-ish, maybe, that was the very first time that medication was on the table then. And at that point, I would say between 2010 2013, I was just riding a wave and just trying to, I hate the word normal, but return to a sense of normality. And then it got to that point that I thought, actually, I don't think this is about my grief anymore. I think this is more deep rooted. And I just cannot fathom why I'm like this. I have no explanation. And that was terrifying because I didn't have an answer. So from kind of 2013 to now, I've been on medication, and pretty much, some months been not too bad, other months more difficult. And then I'd probably say post-COVID, last year I had a particular low point over a 3-month period. And unfortunately that kind of returned again this year, which I'm working through, kind of recovering from a bit of a breakdown at the moment. I say a bit of a breakdown, I should just be honest with myself. No, it was a breakdown. So I'm coming kind of more into a good place at the moment with that. So it comes and goes in waves, but there does become points where it's particularly bad. One time that sticks out is that when I had the breakdown last year and I had to give up the ghost and go off work, was when I was linking in with the community mental health team, and I had been told that I would receive a course of cognitive behavioural therapy. And I'd logged on, it was online at the time, and the therapist then said to me, you're in a really bad headspace and this isn't the right therapy for you. Like, you're too low to have this therapy, so I'm going to have to re-refer you and make sure we get the right help for you. And then I think she said she would call me later on to see how I was. So I hung up the phone, and then my husband had came home from work and he was on the couch when she had called back to check in and let me know what the next steps was going to be. And that's when I was referred for the community mental health nursing input. And I absolutely, but I don't know if it because he was sitting there but I completely fell apart, and I was saying things like, my husband has to do things for me that I can't do. I feel like, he's my carer. I was describing my husband like my carer. I was like, I feel so guilty. And I was just so distressed. It was that cry where you can't talk with, the tears and snotters, and he was holding my hand and he was telling me, just breathe. And it was just such a raw conversation. And of course my husband had seen me like this a lot. I don't hide away from him at all. which is just a testament to him and how amazing he is. But that was tough. Like I hung up the phone from that, and I just looked. I was very much with him saying, I can't do this to you anymore, and I can't do this to me anymore. This is no way to live, and that was dark. Potentially, I'll say things out loud sometimes. That. When you do therapy and people ask you, do you have a plan? Have you suicidal thoughts? And of course, like, I don't think anyone who's been clinically depressed hasn't had thoughts, because it is actually just too painful and too exhausting, and you just wonder, how can this carry on? But I would say that, honestly, I've never had a plan. Of course, there's times that I'm driving across a bridge and I think, oh my goodness, like, wouldn't it be easier just to go? And I need to be honest and say that out loud. I know a lot of people disagree with me, but I think people are brave. People are brave to make that decision. I'm too scared. I'm not in a mindset at all where I can even think about that or contemplate that. Yeah, there have been times where you're just lying staring at the ceiling, and sadly it's those kind of thoughts that are going through your head. But when you're starting to maybe feel better, or you're starting to turn a corner, you realise that is an unwell brain and it's an unwell person. And you can't think rationally. If you can't put the shampoo in your hand to wash your hair, then it's a disability, and it's not a place where you're in a healthy mindset. Well, certainly that was my experience, that fortunately I'm on a journey now that I'm able to recognise what I want to be here for. To start off, it always came from burnout related to work, and a lot of pressure that I would put on myself, and not being able to achieve a good work-life balance. So I, would maybe be unable to turn off the laptop, and then that wouldn't leave room for other things that would make me feel better, such as taking the dog for a walk or spending time with friends and family. So there became a bit of a pattern where all I was doing again was working and shutting the laptop off, a quick dinner, and then go to bed. And I would just describe that pattern as there was no joy in life at all. And then eventually it just an extreme exhaustion, complete and utter exhaustion, where again, sleeping for long periods, and then it's the guilt, isn't it? You just completely beat yourself up because you think, I should be able to wash my face today. I should be able to go for a shower. I should be able to brush my teeth. And then you end up beating yourself up more because the mundane tasks of daily living you actually just can't do. And that just feeds to the breakdown and feeds to the depression. And then it just gets to, unfortunately, that it's so difficult that you just go into the mindset of, what's the point? How long can I live like this? This is absolute torture. And I would describe actually both breakdowns it was very similar, very, very similar. And I'd say the only difference this time round is that I'm able to actively put some things in place that have been really helpful. And as I hope, I don't think this will be a constant lifelong battle. I'm in no denial about that, but certainly having less debilitating days, I would say this time round I'm able to put more things into action than I felt I was previously. It has been such a learning curve, hugely, especially this year. I think the main thing that I've learned is I really struggled with putting the mask on, and I still struggle with that daily, but just such a people pleaser and saying yes to things I don't want to do, and not realising the impact that has on your mental health. Because when you are trying to look after yourself, when you're going through mental health difficulties or depression or bipolar, or whatever it might be, what I think maybe some people don't realise is that it's an effort just to get through the day as it is. So when you are adding things onto that, and you have to, in quotation marks, show up for people, it is an absolute slog. And what I've really learned is, when I was doing that, I said, yeah, I'll come, yeah, I'll do that, yep. And the next day would be absolutely exhausting. And I'd just be like, oh, why can't I get up today? And it's just because I was, pretty much acting up to this other person. I was basically living two lives, and it just becomes exhausting. So I think the biggest thing I've learned learned is that does not help depression whatsoever. What I would say the main thing is, and I'm still learning every day, is to be my authentic self. And that's scary because, sometimes we like to live behind a lie, and it's easier to do that. And it's one of the reasons that I wanted to speak on the podcast. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity just to be able to say things that are truthful and things that I'm experiencing and not be afraid to say that. So that would absolutely be the biggest thing I've learned is about unmasking. And just trying to be honest with me and myself and my friends and my family. But it is a daily battle. I'm constantly thinking about how do I respond to that person? What do I say? What will they think if I don't do that? So I've got years and years of unwiring to do in this brain of mine. But that's been a huge learning. And I think again, just the whole blame scenario, we beat up ourselves, and this is my fault. Why is my brain like this? This is awful. And I think that's acceptance that it's even hard for me to say this just now, but I need to say, it's nothing that I've done. I haven't done anything to cause this. It's at the moment, I think I'm just accepting it's an imbalance, daily stresses, and learning to work through the work-life balance, and doing things for me and doing things that are hopefully going to be better for my wellness and my health in general will hopefully get me on a nice path. Last year in 2021, when I was quite ill with the depression and had the breakdown, then I actually was referred to the community mental health team, and I was supported by a community mental health nurse at that time, and that was weekly sessions. And to be honest, at that point, because things were so difficult, it was actually just complete back to basics, and it was more about motivation. And I had to keep an hourly diary of things that I was able to do, things that I weren't able to do. There was a lot of cognitive behavioural therapy techniques, based on trying to reverse such deep negative thoughts, where I had to write down what I was worried about and then reflect on it, and then write down, what the true take on it was, because we all know when we're anxious and we're feeling particularly low, our thoughts can completely spiral. So it was a lot of what I would say writing therapies and reflection, that was the focus, just to get me out, just a complete, what I would say, funk. And by that I mean, not able to get out of bed, not able to pick an outfit, get washed, all of that. It was tough. And that was maybe about 8 weeks. And that did get me going again. I would say it did start the kind of wind up, and I was able to get going and return to work. This time, because I knew I was just as bad, or certainly going down that rabbit hole again, I knew that I needed a more targeted approach. And I linked in with my GP, but I am privately seeing a psychologist. And through that, I've been seeing her now for maybe about 5 weeks. It's just such a safe space. And I would say the particular light bulb moment has been, I kept saying, why am I depressed? Why am I depressed? I can't work this out. And we were, maybe second or third session, and she said, you keep giving yourself a hard time. You keep beating yourself up. So if something positive is coming your way, it's like you've got the big baseball bat and you are batting the ball away. So all the goodness that is coming, you're not able to accept that, and you're just hitting that all away. Anything that you should forgive yourself for, or anything that you should be kind to yourself for, you're not doing it. Your headspace is not allowing you to do it. So that the light bulb moment went, so if a friend was telling you this, would you be surprised that they were depressed? And I was like, no, I wouldn't be surprised if they were depressed. She's like, yeah. She's like, so, can we start to really work on just being a bit kinder to ourselves and not being so negative? And that might help in terms of just lifting your mood a little, and just appreciating the fact that if you're constantly beating yourself up daily, so not like weekly, like daily, then of course your mind is going to be low. and things are going to seem tangled and things are going to seem foggy. That was something simple, but a real light bulb moment. There's portions of the session where I will have to go into that childlike state almost and speak as if I would have when I was a child. And yes, of course, I think that's been the most, I guess, a revelation that it wasn't actually from 2010. It was deep rooted. I lost my dad when I was young. What we've touched on, there was feelings of not wanting to cause any trouble. There was feelings of wanting to be accepted, and what I had to do to feel loved. And and that sounds crazy saying that, because I absolutely felt very loved and very happy, but it was just the actions that I thought I had to do to be in that place. So that's been really helping me in terms this time round working with a psychologist, is actually realising that there would have been spells throughout my life which completely made sense. Things when I was a teenager or when I had my first breakup. I had a particularly down time when I was around 17, 18. So I guess that was also quite enlightening to realise this has all been ongoing from a young age. It's not just been that one event when I lost my gran. If I could travel back and speak to young Emma, I would say that please try and be your true self. It's okay to say no. That would be a really big thing. It's okay to say no, or it's okay to take a pause and really have a think about what it is that you want to do. I was thinking about this and reflecting on it, that even big life choices like going to uni, and I'm very grateful to be in the profession I am now, but originally it was always midwifery. And again, it was just that self-confidence and self-belief that I was just very much, there's only 15 places at this uni, I'm never going to get one. So I'll just go for nursing first, and then I'll get that, and then I'll try for midwifery. Because there was, like 100 more places in the nursing course. So even from all these key points in my life, I always just thought, oh no, I can't. And that's not really what I want to do, but I'll just do it. And really big things like your career. And unfortunately that has stayed with me, from, dance classes as a young Emma, yeah, okay, I'll do that because my friends are doing it. Did I want to be doing it? No. I wanted to be watching, my favourite pop bands on TV and dance in my bedroom, but I didn't. It's just unbelievable, just the amount of things that I've done that I haven't wanted to do. What kind of life is that? No wonder you're depressed. So yeah, that would be the main message, is just take a pause and have a think, and please do things that you want to do and make the choices that are going to fit you. Don't worry about hurting people. Don't worry about letting people down. Just show up for yourself. What I would like to see improve with regards to the mental health support and services that are out there would be that anybody that is showing up to their GP and are feeling depressed and feeling low or just struggling day on day would ideally be offered that talking therapy within a week. And it's not to say that therapy would have to go on and on and on, but just to be able to have that sit down and that safe space to talk to somebody that is able to decide, maybe, is it medication? Is it exercise? Is it a diet change? What it might be. But I think having that, just somebody who is professionally qualified to help and support when someone is in a really dark place, to be able to see them and not have to wait for months and months and months, and also not to be at that point where you're talking about committing suicide and having a plan, and goodness me, it must be so bad to have a plan and to be actually attempting to end your life. But I do feel that there is a situation at the moment where you have to be at that stage to get a quick appointment with a psychologist, and it's just not the answer. Funding is a huge issue. So if the government could get some money in, that's a big ask, isn't it? Such a big ask. But no, for me, I guess to answer that question, I would think it would be absolutely wonderful within a 7-day period if somebody could have a sit down, whether it's a mental health nurse, whether it's a psychologist, a counsellor, just to be able to have a safe space to open up and not within that short window with your GP. I would say to anyone who is experiencing a particularly low point or going through a breakdown, first and foremost, it's okay. And it's okay to hide away. I think a lot of people think, there's all the tips, isn't there? Getting out for a walk and getting some fresh air, of course. But when you're in the lowest of the low, just be in your bed, feel safe. Find something that makes you feel safe and comfortable. And just a wee bit of acceptance that's okay. I used to feel really, really guilty, particularly about, having to be off work or, not doing the dishes that day. But I think if you just start to accept that resting is part of your recovery, then that's a big thing. Obviously, if you can open up and be honest and speak to your doctor and be honest about how you're feeling, then that's obviously something that I would absolutely encourage. And then finally is actually being honest with your family. And that was something that I wasn't. I was not honest with my mum until this year. And that's something that I regret. And I should have been honest with her a long time ago. But I am so grateful to her for how she has been supporting me and how she has taken the news of me suffering from depression and requiring medication. She's just been amazing. So if you can find that person that you've maybe thought, I want to tell them, I really want to tell them, but I can't, then I promise you, if you can sit down and have that conversation and not be ashamed to say how you're feeling, then that has absolutely helped with kind of getting back on my feet again this time round.
That was Emma's story. What Emma didn't talk about on this episode is how much music has been a part of her life. I wanted to let you all know that she's a beautiful singer, and I hold very fond memories of that time when it was a more prominent part of her life. This is another episode in the series over this podcast where someone's been struggling for some time, but it's been a trigger in later life that has caused a breakdown. I'm very grateful that Emma is talking about her mental health at the start of her journey. She's only 5 weeks into therapy that is addressing the core aspects of what she's been struggling with, and I think it's important for people to hear a story like this, especially if you yourself are in a similar position or even having similar struggles. Emma talks a lot about feeling like she had to put a mask on. There's a fear inside us that we have to meet certain expectations or show up in a stronger or happier form. Perhaps this is to prevent shame, perhaps it's guilt so as not to put pressure on those around us who are close. Perhaps it's because we have to adhere to the rigidity of life and pay bills and feed ourselves and simply live. For Emma, it's been all of those things. Emma brings up a really interesting point about being able to talk about the death of her grandmother, but not being able to talk about depression. It's curious that we're able to talk about something that holds such gravity, but arguably depression holds the same seriousness and should be able to be discussed. Whilst conversations around mental health are improving, stigma is still significant. But perhaps it's the stigma we impose on ourselves that is the biggest hurdle. I will talk about that more in the final episode of this series. Emma's thoughts around suicide are ones that I identify with, and I'm so glad she points out the turning of a corner and how you have that period of reflection. The power of time is monumental and is another common theme. To be able to have time to look back, but the importance of documenting and be able to see progress and a journey is vital. It provides something tangible to show you, yes, things will get better, and yes, this will pass. Her comments about it being easier to live life behind a lie, people-pleasing, not setting boundaries, not being able to say no, and placing unrealistic goals on herself will be things numerous people relate to. I do have to raise the point about her being young and not having the self-confidence to see what path she wanted. I think unrealistic pressures are placed on young adults to go into a career, to find out where their place is, and many of us who are much older and reflective of these times are still trying to find out where our place is and what we truly want to do or who we want to be. And this is where Emma's journey also places another fork in the road now. The years of unlearning and unwiring, as she calls it, but having to navigate a brand new path after all this time is utterly exhausting, but it's worth it. And Emma, your time given to this episode will no doubt help so many others. Thank you for speaking about this so honestly. You're a bright, intelligent, articulate, beautiful woman. Thank you for bringing your authentic self to this conversation. And as you say, now is time to just show up for yourself. If you have experienced or are experiencing anything described in this episode, you will find support information in the text to accompany this podcast. A Sonic Hug is recorded, edited and produced by me, Halina Rafai. We are also part of Scotland's podcasting network, The Big Light. Until next time, deep breaths.
From the Big Light Studio,